Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we got a little bit of a different one. Usually we do guitars on this channel, but today we're going to talk about amps. Specifically, this one right here. This is the Raven RG60. Now, most of you who clicked on this video or have found this video randomly are just going to say, oh, Raven, isn't that terrible, absolutely embarrassing guitar amp? And, you know, that's the reputation that it has, right? So, let's do some history here. So in the mid to late 2000s, Guitar Center had these amps, Raven. They were exclusive to Guitar Center. They were basically a house brand. And the marketing that they did for it was pretty terrible. They just kind of showed up in the store one day in like November to try to, get it in for Christmas time. And they did this with hardly any advertising. They did this with hardly any press releases. Nobody really knew what the hell these things were. And a lot of people attested to, going into the Guitar Centers at the time and seeing these amps, and you may recognize it from seeing it in Guitar Center yourself, and remembering, oh man, those amps are horrible. The reverb was terrible, the dirty channel sounded like a fart can, and the clean channel was nothing special. So they gathered this reputation of being the worst amp in modern history, at least. And a couple years went on, maybe even less than a couple years, and all of a sudden, they disappeared. They never made anything else. There were several different versions of this. There was like the RG20, there was the RG60, which is this one. There was the RG120, which was a 212, same as this, but 212, and it had DSP, digital effects, built into it. And then there was a head of this as well. I don't know for sure what that one was called, but there were a whole bunch of them. And I remember the Christmas that they came out. At the time, I had the amp over here. I don't know if you can see it. Epiphone Slingshot 25R, which we'll review that at some point. And I wanted this because this was bigger and it looked cool. And I was a teenager. I didn't really know what I wanted or what was good. I hadn't discovered Valve yet. I didn't really know anything about guitar gear or amps or whatever. So I really wanted one of these amps, and I think I put it on my Christmas list. I didn't end up getting it, which is fine. You shouldn't automatically get the thing you ask for Christmas, right? And then they disappeared, and I didn't think about it again. Until about a week ago. A viewer reached out to me privately, anonymously, and said, hey, I'm going to send you the worst amp of all time, and you will need to make it sound good for me. Prove that it can be made to sound good. And I thought that was kind of odd. I mean, that's really cool. Thank you to whoever you are, because showed up, and so here it is. I get it inside, I open it up, I look at it, and I'm like, oh man, this reminds me of the days in Guitar Center where it used to be really busy in there. There were tons of associates all the time working in there, and it was just so loud. You'd walk in and everybody was playing everything. Basically, everybody was trying to play Sweet Child of Mine or some Metallica song very loudly, as loud as they could. And then you have all the amps. You have like the Fender Frontmans, you have the Line 6 Spiders, and then you had these. And it just kind of gave me a blast of nostalgia for a world that's been gone for a little while. And I was so excited to plug it in. Like, my intent was to make this video about the worst amp of all time, and why is it the worst amp of all time. So I brought it down here to my basement where I've got all my stuff, all my guitars, plugged it in, and it kind of blew me away a little bit. Now, let me preface this by saying I am not comparing this to like a true Valve tube amplifier or best of the best solid state. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this is something you could gig at an arena or something like that. But this is not the worst amp ever. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's a good amp. So, before we go any further, let's take a closer look at it and see what it's all about. Here we go, the Raven RG60. So if we look at the front panel here, it's really funny because just from the front panel, you know who this amp was made for. Because what is the first channel listed? Have you ever seen that before? Lead is channel 1, rhythm, which is clean, is channel 2. I have never seen that before, and when you look at it with this logo and the way that it's constructed and the way that it looks, this was made for thrash people, I guess, 80s metal fans and lead guitarists. That's who it was marketed towards, at least by appearances. Elephant in the room here. There is a tuner built in. It does not work. I have not been able to get it to work. I'm gonna guess there's probably like a 9-volt battery or something that goes in there, but I would never use that anyway. You wouldn't buy this amp for that feature. It would have been nice when it was new, when it worked, for someone who was where I was at the time, which was, you know, still at home in high school or middle school, playing in my room. That would have been cool. If we look here, so we've got here, you do kind of have a pre and a post, which is kind of nice. So you can set your gain and then you can set your volume. And that's a really nice feature to have and not something that most cheap amps would have. I do want to mention that when these were new, they were about $199. So that's pretty cool. You have your bass, your mid, and your treble. Pretty standard 3-band. Over here on the rhythm side, it does have a separate EQ for each channel, so that's cool. You got your channel selector here, and then you have your reverb, which is not spring reverb, but we'll get to that in a second. If we move down a little bit, so there's your Raven logo. This is metal. There's a metal grate on the front. And I don't know how well you can see it, but you've got some patterned metal underneath as well, behind the grill. And then you've got a big 12-inch speaker, which is a custom Raven speaker, they said. So yeah, that's the front. Let's flip it around. So on the back side, the first thing we're going to look at is no reverb tank. There's your speaker, 60 watts, 8 ohms. I mean, there's really nothing special. I can't tell what this actually is from looking at it. I'm not even gonna guess. I don't know enough about speakers to tell, but it does have a big fat magnet on it, so that's cool. It does have a rubber shielded removable connector, which is really nice if you want to change the speaker or mod this in any way. Up here, unfortunately, it does have a built-in power cable, which I really don't like, but a lot of amps, even really expensive ones, do that. You've got a heatsink, it looks like, right here. You do have an external speaker jack, so as long as you're at 8 ohms or 60 watts or greater, you could plug this into a cab or another speaker or something if you wanted to, and that's built in, so that's cool. You do have an effects loop on the back, and it's foot switchable. And the foot switch is cool because it toggles between channels and it toggles reverb on and off. I do have a foot switch right here. So this is you can buy this brand new right now on Amazon for like $12. It works. If the 2 button changes the channel and the 1 button turns the reverb on and off. I bought it for this amp right here. This is my non-trans tube Bandit 112. It did not have a foot switch, so I bought it for that, but it does work here. So if you have one of these and you want a foot switch and can't find a Raven one, because that would probably be really hard to do, just get this one. It works perfectly fine, and it's very well made. I really like these PV foot switches. Now, before we continue here, I do want to mention, I've talked about the reverb a couple of times. The reverb is not, I can't tell what it is. It might be some sort of early, like, digital reverb. It's not bad, there's just not very much of it. You turn it up all the way and it doesn't sound great, but there is a sweet spot where it's usable. So yeah, let's go ahead now and do a sound test and see how the amp sounds plugged in. We are going to use this guitar here for the first part. This is my Dean MLX, which we will review. It's on the list. And then probably one of those Strats over there, so that we can get a good sound for different styles of guitars. Okay, so here we go. I've got it on here. It's on the clean channel. I'm going to be using the foot switch to switch between the channels and to toggle the reverb on and off. And we'll also listen to what it sounds like at minimum and maximum reverb. So this is clean with the reverb off on the neck pickup. You can't see my head, sorry. It was hard to try to frame this because I wanted you to be able to see the amp and what I'm playing. So here we go. This is the neck, the bridge pickup. expect. It's just clean. Let's go to the neck. Alright, let's turn on the reverb now. So the reverb's about halfway. So you can kind of, very short delay, and that's at half. If I turn it up all the way, you hear how it's still, it's not very good reverb. It's usable, but it's not very good reverb. You'd want to pedal with this. Good enough, I guess, but that's nothing. And it sounds good. There's just not very much there. Now I will say that this amp sounds really good though. Like, I'm not going to run effects in this video. A lot of times when people demo amps, they'll be like, here's the amp, and then all of a sudden it sounds amazing, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm using $500 worth of pedals to get that sound. I mean, if you get an amp with an effects loop in it, no matter how expensive it is, you can probably make it sound okay if you have good pedals. So we're going to run this straight into the amp. This white cable's going straight into the guitar. There's nothing in between, and into this microphone right here. So we're not using the headphone jack, we're using the microphone. So turn that back down. Let's go to the Overdrive channel. And this is the channel that blew me away, okay? I mean, listen to this. I mean, yes, that's a good sound right there. Let's go to the neck. It's almost like it was made for this kind of music. The clean channel is the clean channel, and it's good, and it works, and it's okay. But this Overdrive channel is where it's at, man. I mean, for as cheap as you can get these things for like 20 bucks sometimes. It's an amazing $20. I would say that this amp is giggable, for sure. It's not the worst amp ever made. We're not done yet, though. Let's play around with it a little more. Let's turn the reverb off. Okay, so now we're just raw. That's just such a great sound. And there you go. Promised you another guitar though, so I'm going to put this one down, pick up a Strat. How will it do with single coils for not, you know, metal or rock kind of stuff? Let's see. Okay, so I've got the Strat now. This is the black label that we talked about. before. Very good guitar, very good pickups, very good tones. So I've got it on the clean channel again. Let's see. I mean, if it's a Strat, what's my favorite setting on a Strat? Boom. So let's go to the neck and let's see what we can get out of this. I mean, sounds pretty Stratty to me. Let's put it in the my second favorite spot. Sounds pretty good to me. Sounds a little bit spanky. There's a lot of treble there. With the humbuckers, the bass almost shakes the room. With the single coils, I'm noticing a lot more treble, which is not bad if you're performing, because that's what the bass guitar is for. I'm not saying to cut all the bass out of your signal, I'm just saying, on a recording, you could maybe EQ it if you were going to record with this thing to add the lows back in, but it's also a Strat. You're not going to get a lot of bass out of a Strat, generally speaking, and like I said, if you're performing, that's what your bass player is for. So you want to be heard above and through the mix. That's where your treble and mids are coming in. Now notice though, the bass is up all the way. So yeah. So now we're going to throw it down here to the bridge. I would say with the Strat so far, these positions, this one and this one, are pretty good. When you get down here, really it's up to your taste. I don't really like the way that sounds, personally. Just sounds a little bit too ice picky, I guess would be the word I'd use. But let's see what it sounds like overdriven. That sounds freaking awesome, man. Let's put it on this setting here. My favorite setting. I mean, that sounds awesome right there, in my opinion. The overdriven Strat with this amp, hell yes, amazing. Clean, needs a little bit of help with these single coils, so alright, you've heard it. Let's talk about what we heard. Okay, so we heard it, and we heard it through humbuckers, we heard it through single coils. What do we think? Well, I think that this amp is amazing, honestly. for what it costs now to buy one of these things for like less than $50 usually. I mean, even on GuitarCenter.com, pretty much once a week, you're going to see one of these things for like $49 or less. Get it. It doesn't weigh anything either. It's super light. And that's what got me thinking. I love the way it sounds. It weighs half as much as all of my other amps. Do I dare gig it? Like it or not, it's happening. I'm gigging the Raven RG60 with the Kramer Beretta and the Les Paul Studio. And this board. And this mic. Let's go. So I did gig it, and it was awesome. It was super easy to load into the vehicle. It was super easy to load out of the vehicle. Super easy to set up. It weighs nothing. It got plenty loud enough. I mean, the volume, I didn't even have it at half volume, and it was loud enough for a medium-sized venue, and it did great. I had no complaints whatsoever. It was funny. When I showed up with this thing, I had my other amp. I have a Fender Frontman 212R, which is a really, really good amp, and we'll review that someday too. I had that in my trunk, and the bass player shows up, and the other guitarist shows up, and they looked at my amp and they said, "Are you sure you don't want to go out to your car and grab the Fender?" And, you know, I get it, right? This amp has a horrible reputation. It's like amateur hour. Garage dweller, basement dweller, bedroom dweller guitarist amp. High school kid amp, middle school kid amp. You see these things and you're like, oh my god, come on. But hey, I will tell you this, and I'm a man of my word. I gigged it, and I did that to prove a point. Everybody is being so snobby about gear nowadays. They're talking about, oh, I got this twin reverb, or I got this JCM, or whatever. I agree 1000% that those are some of the greatest amplifiers ever made. They are fantastic. They have tones that are unmatchable. But here's the thing. You don't have to have that to sound good. Whether you are in your basement or your bedroom or your garage, or whether you are out performing as I do, you don't need to have those things. You can make something like this work. Now, that doesn't mean that all cheap amps are good enough to gig with. That's certainly not my point. My point is, you can get a great sound at a very low price. And you don't have to feel bad about it. In fact, if you go up there with a Raven and a Squire, do it. Melt their faces off and blow them away. In your head and in your heart, you know the real truth is, and the real sound and the real skill is in yourself. And as long as you've got an amplifier that you can tweak enough and modify the EQ enough to get it to sound okay, you don't need to go out and take a loan or get a credit card and go buy this expensive amp. You can make something like the Raven work as your workhorse. And guess what? I'm going to gig with it every single weekend. We play about 40 shows a year. Sometimes more, it depends. This is going to go to most of them. I'm not going to break my back for that little extra oomph of tone. This is good enough for me. And every time I set this amp up and every time I turn it on, I'm going to smile a little bit inside and say, oh man, how sick are people going to be knowing that this dude's out here gigging with a Raven? But I wanted to do it. I'm going to do it. I made a video to prove it. It's a good amp. If you find one in a pawn shop, Facebook Marketplace, or on eBay, or on GuitarCenter.com or whatever, buy it. It's a fantastic backup amp, if anything, if you have one of those really expensive, really nice amps, which I'm not telling you not to get. I'm going to get a JCM someday, and a Twin someday, but until then, this is going to do the trick. Thank you very much for watching. I very much appreciate it. Please be sure to follow us on social media, join us on Discord, the links are in the description. If you want to buy anything from Fender, I've got a Fender shop link. That'll help the channel. I've also got a link for 14 days of free Fender Play guitar lessons. Use those links. Helps out the channel. Thanks very much for watching. I very much appreciate all of you. Keep on rocking, and I'll see you next time.